Hello there everyone. Today I want to show you how to make this heart patterned beaded bracelet, and in this case I've just used gemstones because I had some that I thought would work perfectly. They had the perfect size together and then they would make a nice colour combination here for the pattern that I wanted. It looks like this. So it's got a really nice feel to it and it falls really nicely. And then also in the end I finished it off with multi-strand connectors here that I made myself. You can then attach extended chain. On the other end I've got a lost or claw clasp to the same type of connector there. So you can make these connectors to fit exactly the bracelet that you're making. So if you want to learn how to make this, then keep watching. So these are the things that we'll be needing to make this bracelet. Now first of all we need our beads here. In this case I'm working with two different gemstones. The first ones here, they're hematite and they're 3mm regular rounds. And these ones are garnet, they're also 3mm, so these are both the exact same size and they're just regular rounds. We need both of them here, the two different colours, to be the same size, otherwise the pattern and the whole weave itself won't really work out. So these are the beads we're going to use to make the main pattern, and then here I have some 2mm metal spacer beads. I'm going to use these to go around the edges afterwards and also attach my multi-strand connectors. And then the thread that I'm using is this, and this is Fireline. Now this specific one is just a 0.006, it's just the one that I'm working with, because I want to make sure it's pretty thin but still strong, because some of my gemstones here have got small holes and we need to pass through them several times. So that's why I'm using this, it's going to be nice and strong. And then also, to use the thread, I'm using two beading needles here, and it's just either a size 10 or a size 12, it doesn't really matter. Again, just make sure your needles can go through your gemstones or beads, whatever type you're using. And I'm using two because I'm going to be working with two needles at the same time. And then finally, I just have my findings here that I'm going to attach at the end. So my lost or claw clasp, my jump rings and extended chain. And these are going to go onto the multi-strand connectors that I'll be making as well myself, and attaching to the beaded piece that we'll be making with all our stones here. So get all your things together and let's get started. So before I did anything else, the first thing I did was to draw out the pattern here that I wanted. So all these hats, and this is just on a graph paper that I found online. You can just go on Google and then find one of these, you'll be able to find loads. And then you just draw in the pattern that you want basically. So I wanted these hats. But what I'm going to actually do is just focus on one row there. I was just drawing out how it would look with more, but you can obviously do that if you want to. But I'm just going to be doing one row of hats. So I'm going to be following this pattern, and what we're going to be doing is the ladder weave, also known as the right angle weave. And what I've then also done, before we start adding any beads, is I've taken my thread here. So I've taken my Fireline, I've just taken a long length. I've not really taken a very specific length, I just took an arm span and then a bit more, because I really just want to make sure that I don't run out. So I'd rather work with too much, because then what you can do is I've then added my two needles, one on each end, and then I've made sure I've made the tails through the needles very long, because that's what you can do to make it easier to work with, because then you just pull your thread down as you go and make the tails shorter. And I just made sure that my tails are equal length as well. And then we'll get our beads out here so we can start adding them to our needles. And I just got a few of each colour that I'm going to be using. So I kind of have these background colours, these are my hematite gemstones and these are my garnet gemstones, and they're the same size, so they're going to work fine within the pattern that we're going to do. So these are what I'm going to be using. I've got the two bundles there of my beads and I've got my needle and thread ready. So now we need to start adding it all together. So then the first step is to start off our beads here to get into the pattern. What we need to do is, the first time we pick it up, we need to do one full square basically. So I'm just going to pick up 3 beads on one of my needles here. And this is my background colour, so my hematite. So that's 3. Just let them drop down, and then I'm going to pick up another one where I'm going to just bring it down a little bit off the thread, and then we need to go through this bead with the other needle in the opposite direction. Like that, so that they're now coming out through the bead in this direction opposite each other. Then I'm just going to put my needles together here so that when I pull all this down, it's going to end up in roughly the middle of my thread. So just pull it all the way down to your other 3 beads, and then what you have is this little square of your 4 beads. And this is going to be the basic of the whole technique that we're going to be doing. So this is what's called either the ladder weave or the right angle weave, depending what you prefer to call it. So we have this little square now. Now we need to keep building from this, but this is the first one, so that's why we picked up 4 beads. From now on, we only need to pick up 3 to complete another square, because the one you cross through is both the final one in the one you just made, but it's also the first bead in the next one. So like that. So I've already got that one on, so now we just need to get 1 on each. And actually, this was the full background colour. On the outer one on my left side, I'm picking up the background colour, but on the inner one, I'm actually going to pick up one of my garnets here, because that's what we need to get into the hats as well. So remember that you need to follow your pattern. So like that, and then we need to cross in another one, and that's going to be the background colour, because we are still doing the outer edge now. That's what we're starting off with. Bring that down just a little bit. Remember, this is the one we need to cross through, because from now on, when we're building, we're adding 3 beads and crossing through that third one after having 1 on each side there. Now bring this all the way down. Just pull all your thread through till it comes all the way down to the other one, to the first square that you made. And then it's going to sit like this. You can see you now built another square on top of that, and in this case we just started off with that first red bead, because that's going to be the beginning of our hearts as well. And then moving on to the next one. Now this one needs to be only the background colour again, so that means I'm picking up another 1 in each needle. Now this is just the hematite ones, the background colour. Like that. Let them drop down, and again we need to cross through 1 then, and this is also the background colour. Bring it down just a little bit and cross through with the other needle in the opposite direction. Like that. And bring all of it down to the other ones that you've already built. And just pull it down so we don't have any loose thread here. So there we go. You can always just give it a little tug when it's down there. So there we have a third square, and it's starting to build now. You see this ladder weave going, or the right angle weave. And basically you just want to keep doing this, then obviously following whatever pattern you've got. In this case I'm doing the hearts, and that means the next one again needs to be only background colour, because if you can imagine the pattern that I'm doing with the hearts, basically the hearts are going to be going like this. So this is just the outer side. One side of the hearts we're going to be starting off with, the outer edge of the bracelet. Then we come all the way up to the other end, and we're going to be going back down, and that's going to fill in more of the hearts. But we'll get to that point. Again, cross through your third one, again the background colour, and let that drop all the way down here to where the others are, and then you now have 4 squares just like this. So continuing, moving on to the next square that we're going to do, and this is where we run into one of the hearts again. See the outer edge of the heart. So we start off on the left one here, on the outer edge of the bracelet. We're working this way, imagine that. We're picking up one of the background colour, and then on the right side in my case I'm picking up one of my heart colour here, so the garnets, and then again we need to cross through a background colour, so the hematite. And just like all the other times, pull it all the way down on top of the others. So you're really starting to see this pattern coming together now. Separate your threads out again with your needles. And then basically you just want to keep building like this. The next one is going to be only background colour, because we're now going into the point where we can kind of keep repeating the pattern as well. And to be honest, even without referring back to the pattern that we drew, because you'll be able to start actually just looking at what you've already made and I'll just show you. Go through this, because this was then purely the background colour, because this one was right after where we just added one for the hat, and that was the same as the previous one down here where we just added one for the hat. We have two pure background colours in between every one where we add a hat colour as well on the right side. So you want to keep doing this. I need to now do another one of just the background colour before I add in another hat colour as well. You basically want to do this until the length is long enough to be the length of the bracelet that you want. Obviously minus the clasp and all that you're going to use as well. That's completely up to you. So just get to the length that you need this part of your bracelet to be. So I now continued here until I reached the length that I want it to be, almost. We just got one left to do, but I'm just going to show you how we do that. And what you want to make sure to do as well is finish in the right place. So if we look at the pattern that I've been doing, we have the background colour the whole way through. The only difference is, once we get into the pattern here, it's every other one on the right side, sorry, every third one with two of the background colour in between. That's the pattern, because that's the hat colour then that we're doing. So if you remember down here at the beginning, what we did was one full square of the background colour, and then the second one we added in was the hat colour on the right side. So we want to finish off in the same way. So that means up here, right now, the last square that I did, I added in my hat colour on the side there, the right side. So the last square that we need to do is going to be the background colour only, but we also need to do a bit differently because we need to make a turn now up here to be able to come back down and then fill in next to this and continue on the pattern there. So what that means is, I'm just using my hematite here because that's my background colour. I'm going to pick up two on my left one, so that's my outer thread here, so not the side with the hat colour but my left side, and then I'm going to pick up one on my right needle, and then what we need to do is actually cross through the one where it's just that single bead on the side. Cross through that in the same way as the other times, and then what happens when we pull this all the way down is we're going to have a turn in this. So instead of just keep going straight up, because we're crossing through the side one instead of the top one, we now have our threads coming out to the side there. You can see it's going upwards and downwards instead of out to the sides, and that's exactly what we want, because then we need to get ready to be able to turn around and then, like I said, come back down the other side and build our way downwards again to fill in more of the pattern. So that's how we make that turn. And then to fully complete the turn, because we're just facing this way now, we need to come back down this way, so the opposite way as to where we were going before. We need to repeat this again. So what I just did, and this is again the background colour on the outside here, because that's the top now. So I need to put two on my left one, still the outside of the bracelet, think of that. So two on my left needle, and then one on my right one. But gotta remember, to follow the pattern, this is going to be a hat colour, because we have the side of the hat here, and the one that's going to lay right there is going to be the top of one side of the hat. So I'm going to add one on my garnet gemstones here on that, so just one bead on the right side, right needle, and then there's this one that we need to cross through. So just like this, and again pull it all the way down. So it's going to end up sitting this way then. As you can see, we then put another square on top, so when we look from where it was before, it's kind of on the side there. But because the threads are facing in the opposite direction, we can now completely turn this around. So instead of going this way, building away that way like we did before, we're now coming back the other direction. And up here, and see, we just added that garnet is going to be the very top of the hat, and now we again have our threads coming out to the side, but just working our way back down again. So this is what it looks like now, and then we'll continue up here, and then we're going to be able to see the hat shaping a bit more as well as we do this. So again, we're doing the exact same way. The only difference now is, as well as having, like I said, the bead there that we crossed through, both of them, is the first one out of each square. Now, because we already have this side done, we're also going to have one of the sides every time we make a square. So right now my threads are coming out to the side from this bead right here that we're crossing through. So I'm going to take my right needle that's pointing towards the work that I've already done, and we need to cross through the other red bead, so the garnet there, that's part of the hat on the side. So basically if you're looking at your squares, it's kind of the one where they're meeting corner to corner as well. We need to connect those two because that one's also going to be part of the next square. So go up through that before we add any beads in. So we're ready for that. That's going to be connected now. And then we need to also add one to the outer left one. So just imagine that this one we just crossed through is the same as adding a new bead, except it's already incorporated into it. And then the one we add on the left side also has to be a garnet because that's still part of the hat. We're basically in the middle of the hat now, filling that in. Let that drop down. And then we need our last one to cross through. And in this case that's still the hat colour. So I put that onto one needle, cross through that with my other needle, and then as we let this drop all the way down, this is going to sit in and then basically form the next square, and it's going to just nestle in there just right and continue that shape and the same technique as well. So now you can see we're building extra squares, so we kind of have a bigger square down here now, 4 little squares forming a bigger square, and that's basically how we're going to keep going. So remember, every time we've finished one square, the thread and the needle that's out to the right side always has to go through the next bead on the side here, that the meeting corner to corner. So the one side one from the square that we did coming upwards first, to connect them together fully. So like this. And then again, because that's then the one on the right side, the same as adding one, the equivalent to that, except it's already incorporated. And then on the on the left side, so the outside here, that again needs to be a hat colour, and that is basically the very point, the bottom point of the hat then, that we're adding on the outside. But then to cross through, we need to add a background colour. So add that onto either needle, and then cross through with the opposite needle in the opposite direction. And let it drop all the way down to form that square on top of the others. So there we have the next one, as you can see, and we basically now have one full half of the hat. And then you basically just want to keep going like this, obviously following a pattern, making sure you put the right colours in the right place according to the pattern that you want. In this case I want to do the hats, so the right one, the right needle and thread, remember, just needs to go through the bead that's already incorporated into the bracelet, into the piece that we're making, before we're adding any new ones. So like that. And then on the outside one, we need to then get a background colour on the left needle, and then the one we need to cross through, we're now getting into the point where we're adding into the next hat. So the one we need to cross through has also got to be a hat colour, because it's going to be the very top of the next hat. Well, so we just finished off the bottom of the first hat there. So you want to cross through a hat colour, and then we're starting the next hat. Pull it all the way through so it sits like this, and you can see you got the very top of that next hat here as well. And this is then the point where we start to almost get into the point where we don't really have to look at a pattern anymore, but we can just look at what we've done previously to know what beads to put on, what colours to put on. So get your thread through that bead on the side again that's already incorporated into the bracelet. Just got a bit of a tangle here. So just when you find as well, if you get a tangle or a bit of a knot as you're working with it, which you probably will do, it's more likely working with long lengths of thread here. Instead of just trying to pull hard at it and pull it through, it's better to just try and go to it and then use your needle to try and undo it before you pull it through, because you can kind of damage your thread, and obviously it'll get really hard to get through the beads as well. So just undo it, and then once you've undone it, you can then pull it all the way back through again carefully so you don't get your knots there. That's through on the one side, and then on the left we now have to see where we are again. We just added the top of the hat there, so that means we need to add basically the middle of the hat again. So add your hat colour on the left side as well, and then this is where, if you remember from the first one that we did, we also need to cross through a hat colour, because this is then filling in and creating that one side of the hat. So just add a hat colour onto whichever needle and cross through it. Just like that. Pull it down. And it can always help, try and have your piece lying flat as much as possible. Obviously it's going to move around, but just as you're pulling it to see where you are and how it's going. So there we go. That's the next hat we're almost done making. And the next one, if you remember, first off just go through on the side, and basically the next one is then going to finish off this hat in this section that we're doing now in the rows. So going through the one on the side, and then on the left side we just need to add that very last hat colour for this hat, because that's going to be like a, in the previous one it's going to be the very tip of the hat, and then we need to cross through the background colour. And then we have the second hat done in this go around, the half of it, and there you can see we then have the exact same thing as we do up here, and then we just keep repeating this, and the pattern is going to keep repeating itself. And this is where you can now start looking at what's the next one the next colours you gotta add in, just looking back on your previous work. So that makes it a little bit easier as well. So you just keep doing this all the way down the side here of the section you already made, all the way till you get to the very bottom there, and then that's another one done. So I've now gotten all the way back up to the other end again, and we just have the one left to do, and then this is where we need to do another turn just like we did up in the other end, to come back down and do the other half of the hat, because here we have the one half, so we still need to go back up. So I've gone through the one on the side as well, so what I'll have to do now is add my beads so we can then do that turn as well. And to do that I've just added a hematite, a background colour there on my right one that's coming out from the outside there, the bead, and then I've added one of my hat colour onto my left side. So I'm going to let the hematite one drop down, the background colour, and then the hat colour, my gemstone there, garnet one, I'm going to go through that just like all the other times we're crossing through. Cross your needle through in the opposite direction, and then as you're pulling this down, this is where we're then making the turn towards the side instead of just continuing upwards. So like this. So now we have our threads coming out upwards and downwards instead of out to the side. And then this is how we make the first turn. We can just turn the whole piece around, make it easier to work with. And we just need to make another turn again here, just like we did at the other end, to be able to go back up the other way again. So for that, on my right needle here that's towards the outside of my project, I'm going to add 2 of my background colour. So just add 2 of those and let them drop all the way down. And then what we need to do is just to add the needle really, I'm going to add one of my hat colour. And then this is the one that we need to cross through. So bring it down a little bit, take your other needle and go through it in the opposite direction. And then as we pull this down, be able to see that this is also creating a turn. Just like that. So again, we're crossing out. The threads are coming out upwards and downwards instead of out to the side compared to how we're looking at the piece. So again, we can then turn the whole thing once more. And now basically we're going back upwards again. So this time the hearts are facing the right direction. Same direction as we were doing the very first row of our beads here. So basically what we need to do now is go back up here and create the other half of the hearts. So it's still going to be the same principle of the other rows we're doing up and down. The only difference is your needles are switching jobs a little bit. So in this case it's going to be the left one, so this is the one from the left side, that I'm going to take. That's now going to be the one going through the one on the side from the previous row that we did. So I need to come up through just that one to help complete this square that we're making now. So that's now going upwards, and then we need to add a bead to the other one. So my right needle, I'm going to grab one of my heart colour, let it drop down, and then we need to grab another heart colour and cross through that one. So basically the first needle on the left side, where we just brought it through the bead that's already there, just going to have to pick it up. On that side there, that's one side of the square that we're making, that's already incorporated, and then we added the one on the other side. So just add one more heart colour and then cross through that one. Just like this. Then as you're pulling your threads downwards, it's going to then build up the next square, and this is then actually completing one full hat. So the very first hat there, it's going to look like that. So now we need to keep going. Same thing, take the thread that's now on your left, go through the next one on the side, pull it all the way through, and then pick up one of your background colour on the right one, let it drop down, and then we need to cross through a background colour as well. So this then creates that background colour with the spacing in between the hats. Pick that up and cross through that. And let it drop all the way down. Pull it down gently here so we're building the next square. And then as you can see, it sits like that. And then we're pretty much ready. We're now going to make the next hat. So just go up through the side again. And you'll pretty much be able to either keep looking at the pattern that you got, or just keep looking at the ones that you've then already made to be able to know what beads to put on from now on. As you can see, I've reached my next hat, so I can just look back down to the bottom to see which ones I need to add. So again, we need to do this all the way up to the other end of the bracelet again, to then be able to come back down one last time. So I've now reached all the way down to the other end again here, and I've made my turn as well to be ready to go back up the opposite direction one last time. So you just want to do that the exact same way as we did the other times. The first time down here and then the second time up the other end. And you just want to add all your background colour here because we've finished off all the hats now as well. So make that little turn, and then the last go up the side here that we need to do is just using the background colour, because then this side is going to end up looking the same side, so the same way that this side does. So we just continue with that. I've already gone through my side bead there to form my next square. So that means I need to put one background colour on my left needle, and then just put a bead, one of the same ones, on either needle, and then cross through that. And that's going to form your next square here, the second one in this round, on this row. Bring all the way down, you can see you form that square. And then before we make the next one, remember to go up through the side, bead on the inside of the bracelet there, because that's part of the next square. And again, add one bead to your outside needle, in my case the left one here, and then just add a bead to either needle and then cross through that. And again, pull it all the way down. And that's your next square. So this is just what you want to do all the way up the other end, and once you've done that, you're going to have the complete bracelet and the pattern that we're making here. So I've now reached the other end here, and then this is basically the complete bracelet, how it looks, this part of it. So this is the main pattern that we've done. So what we need to do now is, because I don't have that much thread left now, what I want to do is actually go and tie this off. So we need to obviously secure it in place. We need to tie some knots so we can finish off the ends of the thread. So both my ends of thread are coming out from that very last bead down here that we've added, just in opposite directions there. So first off, what I just want to do is get my threads to kind of the same point where they meet up then. So I'm going to bring this up one side. And this is really just to find a way to finish off your thread and tying your knots. And the other one I'm going to come around the side, the outside bead in this square, and then also through the last one here, so the top one we're looking from this angle, because then what we have is our two threads in the same corner of this square facing each other, so like this. So what we can do now is tie these two together. So this is just the first knot that we want to do. So I'm just going to take the two threads, put them together like this and tie a regular knot. And what I actually want to do is tie a surgeon's knot, so go through with one side twice there. And then as we tighten this down, I'm going to also make sure that we're tightening obviously the last square nicely in place there. So it looks like that now. Because it is fine thread we're using, we're not really going to be able to see this. So that's the first knot, and I just want to then continue with one thread at a time, go around making some more knots to secure it in place. So we just have threads kind of pointing towards each their own direction. I'm going to go back through the bead again that we just came out as the last one. And then the only thing you're going to kind of have to stay aware of with this is you want to make sure you follow your thread path. So for instance, on the outer edge, you don't want to jump from one outer bead to the other one on the next one over. You have to follow your thread path in these squares that we added, just to have as little thread visible as possible. So you just want to get to the next place where you want to add a bead, so that might be here for instance. What you want to then do is come up from underneath, through that square, open gap, take your thread out, don't pull it all the way because we have a little loop left then. We're going to go through that with our needle twice. And then we just want to tighten this knot down right where the thread is coming out in front of that bead, or behind the next one, however you look at it. So that's your next knot. So now following the thread path again, go through your next bead. So remember, not jumping over to the other one on the outer edge, we have to go in the squares. Go through that, and then if you pull a bit, your knot will disappear as well, nicely into the bead. And you just keep doing this, follow whatever path you want to. That seems a good place to then tie a knot. Go through outer one again, and then I'm going to tie my next knot here, come up through the square there from underneath, go through that loop that we left twice. And I prefer to go through it twice. That's a bit extra secure than just doing a single normal knot. Make sure you just pull the thread then into the right corner, right where your thread is coming out from the bead, and then tighten the knot down. Just like that, and then keep going. And that's basically how you want to finish off your thread. And you obviously want to then do the same thing with the other end. So back down from where you tied them together, take the other thread, find a thread path, and just start tying off there as well. And then when you cut off your thread, you want to make sure after you do your last knot that you don't cut it off right after a knot. You want to go through some more beads just to kind of get that thread in there, because if you cut it off right next to a knot, chances are that's far more likely to come undone. So keep tying off your threads like this. So I'm now finished off all my threads here, and we have this nice finished piece of beading. You can see with the pattern there, and it's going to lay really nice on the wrist as well. So this is kind of the main piece, but what I want to do now is continue beading a bit more, and we also need to attach our ends to it. And what I'm going to do is I basically want to finish off the edge here, because you can use it as it is, but I kind of think the ends or the sides here look a bit unfinished. So that's what I'm going to do now, fill in those gaps on the sides. So to do that, I'm then going to get my little 2mm metal spacer beads here that I want to use to fill in the edges. I'm just going to have these ready. And then also I've gotten my needles ready. Again, just put an arm span of my thread and then 2 needles, one onto each end there. So the exact same way that we started this. So that's how I'm going to work again. And then the first thing I want to do is attach my thread and needles here. So I'm just going to start for one of my corners. I'm just going to move my beads over to the side. Make it more comfortable to work with. So it doesn't matter where you start. I'm just going to start on one corner down here. Then I'm going to go through the corner bead there towards the side. Just down through that. And then I first of all just want to kind of put my needles together here to roughly make sure that I'm starting in the middle of the thread. It doesn't have to be exactly the middle, but just so we have roughly the same length of thread on each side here. Because we'll be working with one needle at a time in this case. So just like that. And then I'm just going to take my one needle again, just leave the other one to the side. And then how I'm going to fill in all these gaps, because we're in a corner now, I'm just going to start with the bottom row here. So in this very corner I'm going to pick up then one of my 2mm spacer beads, get that onto my needle, there we go, and then to go around the corner I'm just going to go from this bead in the weave on the side straight down to the one on the bottom here. And then this little bead is just going to fill in that corner just nicely. You can just pull from both ends. So that sits right there. And then we basically just want to keep doing the same thing. Pick up one bead at a time, filling in between each bead on the outside edges there. So jump from one bead over to the next, making sure you pick up one of your small beads in between. And then they're going to fill in just nicely along the edge and make it look really finished as well. And we're also going to be using these small beads to then help attach the clasp and the multi-connector that we're going to be using. So that's what we need them for as well. It just finishes the piece off nicely. So I'm going to go all the way over to the other side here. So this is then the bottom. We'll come into the other corner. Make sure you fill it in, and when you pull it, you want to make sure you pull your thread. It doesn't have to be tight because you don't want to pull your thread through your beads, but make sure you pull it so your beads do nestle in nicely along the bottom edge there. They're not sitting further out and going to end up looking funny. So just make sure you pull it nicely. Go around the next corner, just do the same thing. Jump from one bead over to the next one around the corner. Then this one still fills it in just nicely. Now what I then want to do is I'm not going to go too far up this side. Just going to add one more on this side, because then I'm going to leave this here, because I'm going to go back and then use this needle and thread that we just added these beads with to then add my clasp, my multi-strand connector down on this edge. So I'm just going to leave that here for now. We've added in on this end. So put this to the side. I'm going to then pick up my other needle that's coming out from the other side where we started off to begin with, adding the thread, and I'm just going to basically be doing the same thing, but in this case we're going in the opposite direction. So pick up one bead and then we're going upwards along the side here, so just jump from the one you're coming out of over to the next one, filling in that gap with one of your small beads like that. And you just want to do this all the way up along the side of the piece. So you're going to end up almost having a little frame around the outside. It gives it that nice finished edge to it. So do this all the way up. So I now kept going all the way up the side here until I go up to the top, and I've just gone across the top section there as well and just started down the other side basically, so we're at the same place as we are down here. So I'm going to stop here. I'm not going to just do this side just yet, because what I want to do first is then also attach my multi-strand connectors while we're at the ends. And then I'm going to just go back down to this one where I started out. What we want to do first is get into position, because right now the thread is coming out from the bead down here, which obviously this connector needs to be attached right at the end. So what you want to do is just follow your thread path again, go back through. I'm going to turn inwards to go through the bracelet, and it's really quite simple. Follow your thread path until you get down to the corner here. Just what you got to remember is just follow that path. So because we made these squares, never go straight across to a bead across from the one you're coming out from, because then you'll be able to see the thread. That we've only done that at the outer edge, but we then covered that with adding in a bead. You always want to make sure you go around corners because of this type of weave that we've done. Pull it through, and then just down here, we're almost at the end. Go through the side bead as well. Coming up right by the corner. And then what I'm going to do as well, oh, my thread just got caught. So if your thread ever kind of gets caught in a place, just use your needle to get it back out and then get it in the right position and then pull it tight there. So what I also want to do is go through the little spacer bead, the silver one there that we added right on the corner. I'm going to go through that as well, so I'm coming up straight out towards the small edge down here. So this is now where we want to start attaching our multi-strand connectors. So I then have one of my connectors here that I've made. And I've already got a tutorial where I show how you can make these connectors if you want to make them yourself, because then I know for sure that I'm making this to fit exactly with the bracelet that I'm making here. So this one is going to fit my project. So I'm going to put a link to that tutorial in the description box below if you haven't seen it already. So that might be helpful. It's really helpful as well to be able to make your own connectors for multiple projects. So you can make them just how you need them. So I'm coming out right here on that corner bead upwards. So what we need to do is add 3 of our small metal beads onto the needle. And they keep rolling around quite a bit. So obviously they're round. So adding 3 of these, like that, and you can just let them drop down. Then what we've got to do is just make sure that you lie the connector in the right way if you have a preferred side. And then I'm going to go up through the very first loop on my connector here, that's out towards the corner. Also let that drop down. So both my beads and my connector there is down towards my project. And then what I'm going to do, because my beads are actually going through that loop in the connector, so what I'm then going to do is go back through my next bead in the project, but instead of coming through that metal spacer bead that we're coming out of, I'm going to go straight through to the next one over. So just use your needle, push your bead out of the way so you can get through there. Get through that, in my case the hematite, so the background colour. Then what I also want to do is get through the next metal spacer beads that we added in on the edge. So we're going through 2 beads technically. Pull that all the way, and then as we're pulling it, we just want to make sure that this is going to sit correctly. So you might have to just adjust your beads here, with them coming through the multi-strand connector there. You need to make sure that the beads are sitting tightly down towards your project and basically connecting, looping through the loop on your multi-strand connector there. So you just help your beads along the way if you need to. So it's going to sit like this. So that's the first one connected. Pull it nice and tight. So now we're at the second one here. So as you can see, where we're coming out is the next metal spacer bead, and that meets up perfectly with the next loop there. So I'm just going to put my thread behind, in between my project and my multi-strand connector, and then get it behind there because I want to come up from behind when I'm attaching the two. So to get ready for that one, add another 3 spacer beads here, the little ones, onto your needle, let them drop down, and then we need to come up through the next loop, so the second one here, pull all the way through, and again just let your beads drop all the way down to again go through that connector basically when we tighten it. So it can be a little bit loose and fiddly as we're attaching this multi-strand connector, but just take your time, make sure your beads sit correctly. Now what I want to do is, because we're now in the middle part here, so now I want to go back through the same bead that I came out of. So that's that little metal spacer bead. Go back through in the same direction, so from the other side, through the next one as well, so my background colour, my hematite, and the next metal spacer bead as well. So we're now basically going through 3 beads, and this is going to then attach the next loop onto my piece. Just keep hold of it while you're pulling, and again just make sure that your beads are sat completely how you want them to, so they're nice and tight, forming like a little loop there at the end of the bracelet, and then attaching through the loop on the multi-strand connector. That's what we're doing here. When you're happy with that, then we're at the next loop, and we just then now do the same thing. So when we're doing the middle ones here, attaching the middle loops, we're going back through the same bead that we're coming out of. Just get your thread behind. It's only when we're at the edge we're going through in a different way, because obviously this corner bead, it sits a bit differently than those in the middle do. Come up through the third one, and then back through the same bead that you came out of. Just push your beads to the side if you need to with your needle. So obviously we have kind of filled in the gaps with these small beads, so it can be a little bit tricky to get your needle in there. Go through that, and then the next 2 as well. So a total of 3 beads here. If you can, you might as well go through all of them at the same time. Follow that path, and then pull your needle and thread all the way through to tighten the beads. And that's going to then sit and connect your next loop together. Make sure your beads go through the loop in the connector. And that's how you then attach it. So there we go. We now have 3 loops connected. So you just want to keep doing this with all your loops, regardless how many you've got. Do this with the next one, and then on the edge here you just want to do the same as you did in the other corner. So just go through the bead in the same way. And then when you've done that, that's going to be your multi-strand connector attached on the one side there. So now that I've reached the other side here, and I'm right in that corner, so I've completely attached my multi-strand connector now, then we're at this side where we've filled in the gaps with the small beads already. So I just want to continue down a bit here. So go down a few beads down the side, just to completely fasten in the connector, so it stays in place while we then continue working with it. So that's it now, it sits nicely like this, and there's also a bit of movement to it. So now we're on this side, all you want to do then is you can go back over to the other side and get your thread ready here. But you want to do the exact same thing that I just showed you down here on this end. So that's where we left the other thread, and it's ready here. So first of all, it's coming out on the side, follow the thread path back towards the corner, and then attach your multi-strand connector, the other one, in my case it's this one, to this edge the exact same way. And then when you've done that, you can take this thread back to the other side, because we still have this one to fill in as well. So it's up to you which one you want to use. You can also, if you have a thread that's longer than the other one, you can do that just to make sure you're not going to run out along the way. So attach the end as well, and then you've got your multi-strand connectors connected there, so we're ready to attach a clasp, and then we can just start filling in the last side. So I've now got my thread back in position here to the other side. What I recommend that you do as well, I just want to mention, because when we attached the multi-strand connector here, we only went through each loop that we did with the beads once. So as you're working from the side that we ended on, back to this side to finish this side off, where we've got to fill in the gaps with the little beads, I recommend that you go through all these loops again. So just take one at a time, get to it, take one bead at a time, go around in the circle, move to the next one, just in the same path that you did when we were attaching it together in the first place. It just gives it that extra strength, so any reinforcement you can do, especially on these places, it's going to get a lot of movement. So you want to make sure that it's as secure as possible and durable. So it's just a little tip. I want to recommend that you go through that at least one more time. So now we're on this side. I'm almost at my first empty gap. Just need to go through the next bead, next spacer bead that I already added, and then the next bead on the edge as well, my background colour. Pull it up, and then I reach my first gap there on this side. Just fill in the exact same way now, jump from one bead to the next and fill in with your little beads in between. And then we're going to get a completely finished edge around the whole bracelet here, while we've connected our multi-strand connectors as well along the way. And I just want to mention another thing, the reason that I've done it this way, so we made the whole main piece, the pattern itself first with one thread, and then I tied it off, and then we started a new thread to add in the embellishment on the side, so the frame there, and the connectors. The reason that I did that is because, like I said, this, where the connectors are, this is one of the most fragile parts, it's going to get the most wear. So say if that was to break, it's a shame if you used one thread for the whole piece, because that's going to ruin the whole bracelet, and you're probably going to lose, if not all, then most of your beads as well, just from it breaking where the connector is added into it, or where your clasp is, basically, you could say. By using two separate threads, so one thread for the inner piece and then one thread to add the connectors and the sides. If the thread on the connectors break, you still have your whole middle piece intact. So you can just, if you want to, redo it, so reattach your connectors, and you haven't lost any of the main part of your design, basically, all these beads or gemstones depending what you're using. So that's one reason, probably the main reason really, why I did it that way, use two separate threads. Because usually you prefer to use one to make it more secure instead of having to tie on new thread, but in this case I thought it made a bit more sense to do it that way. In case your connector breaks, then you haven't lost your whole bracelet, you can just redo that part. So just keep going up the side here the exact same way as I've done the other times, filling in those gaps until we reach this place. And remember as well, on this end, go through your connector, the loops there one more time at least to reinforce it. But then once you've done that, you then basically completed the whole bracelet. So I've now kept moving my thread around, following my thread path, going through the other end as well again, and I've ended up here where I have both threads coming out right at the same spot. So I'm going to take advantage of that and just start tying off my threads here, because we're done with the whole bracelet now. Otherwise, you can see we have both ends attached, the whole pattern, and then all the sides as well where we're filling in the gaps. So we can start tying off the threads. So I'm going to take both of them here, and they're in the same place, and I'm just going to take them, cross them over each other and tie an overhand knot, but go through it twice, and then bring that all the way down and tighten that nicely. So we have a knot right there, and then I'm just going to leave one thread for now. I'm just going to take the other one and start working with that, and then we're going to go up through the next bead. So because I'm going to tie knots along the edge here, which means that the knots are going to be nice and hidden, but because when you're tying them they're going to naturally fall in between the beads, but also when we then move through the next bead, we're then going to, when you pull a little bit, the knot is actually going to go inside your beads anyway. So we just want to continue tying off our threads with one thread and needle at a time here. So I'm in front of my next bead. I'm going to come up through a gap, and then without pulling it completely tight, I'm going to leave a loop and go through that twice. So this is the exact same way that I tied off when I just did the middle section there that I showed you. The exact same way. Pull the knot all the way down where your thread is coming out from, like that, and then take your needle, go through your bead and the next one, and then pull your knot through there. And that's basically how you want to keep tying them off. So what I would just recommend is keep going, tying knots after knots after knots, because the more you tie, I've got a fair bit of thread left, the more secure it's going to be and durable. So I'm just going to tie all the way up the side and then see what I'm like for thread. And I'm going to do the same, bring this down, the other thread and needle, go through, find a thread path. I might actually just go through the connector again. So we're connected, the multi-strand connector, go through that one more time, because the more reinforcement, the more secure it's going to be. And then I'm going to take this and go to the other side of the bracelet and start tying my knots with this one on that side in the exact same way. So that's all you want to do. And then when you've used up most of your thread and you feel it's nice and secure, you can just get to a point you tie your last knot, go through a few more beads, so you don't cut off your thread right where you made your last knot, but you go through a few more beads and then you can cut off your thread. And then once you've done that, you'll have your completed bracelet, after obviously attaching whatever clasp you're going to use as well. So now that I've gone through and continued making all my knots along the sides, reinforced both ends as well, again like I said, then this is your finished bracelet. So you have your multi-strand connector on each end there, and then your pattern with the beads, and then the framing on the side as well, using the little metal spacer beads just to kind of finish off the edge, and then the other end. And then you can just use it as a normal clasp like any other bracelet, and it'll sit really nice on your wrist. It has a really nice feel to it. It's nice and flexible, but it still holds its shape and obviously the pattern as well. So this is what it looks like. Make a nice finish with those multi-strand connectors and attaching a clasp with them. And obviously if you want to, you can make it much wider as well and just make your multi-strand connectors equally wide to match that. So it's completely up to you. This is just a bracelet like this with this Valentine's theme pattern to it, and then made your own connectors as well. So that's what it looks like, and pretty simple to do. You just gotta do a few steps to achieve the final look. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial and found it useful, and you can maybe use the ideas for some other projects yourself. So thank you very much for watching. Hello everyone. In today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this Kisses beaded Kumihimo bracelet, and it looks like this. So these are all your X's going all the way around, representing your kisses, making it very Valentine's if you want to use it for that. And then obviously the embellishment as well, and along the sides, and I chose to use red bicones to go with the Valentine's theme. You can also choose whatever materials that you want to use. So this is what it looks like, and it's got